For waters break forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. The burning sand shall become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water. Hello everyone, this is Gilgamesh, and today we are talking about Isaiah chapter 35. Now, the last time, in chapter 34, we talked about how the wicked, the land of Edom, would go from a land of vines and fig trees and sheep and goats to a hellscape with fire and brimstone and flowing pitch, and it would become the eternal possession of demons. Now, in this chapter, we're going to have the complete contrast to that as we turn to Zion, and it's going to go from being a desert to a Eden-like garden. We start here in verse 1, and the first line might be understood as a bit of a superscript here, but it sets the tone for this whole thing. The wilderness and the dry land shall be glad. The desert shall rejoice and blossom like the rose. She shall blossom abundantly and rejoice. Joy and singing. You'll notice that this forms a little bit of a chiasm here, and I highlighted that so you can see the structure here with rejoice being the outer sides of it and blossoming being the center. Now, we say it'll blossom like the rose. As with a lot of plants in the Bible, we're not sure what plant this is. Probably isn't the rose. Big guesses that are out there are that it is a crocus or an asphodel. And rose sticks because that's what the King James Version went with, and it sounds nice in English. Blossom as the crocus just doesn't roll off the tongue quite so much, but in reality this was probably a crocus or an asphodel, and we'll just stick with rose because it sounds nice in English. It is used both here and also in the Song of Songs, and we talk about it blossoming. Well, blossoming abundantly is an English approximation of the original Hebrew here, which is pareach tifrach. And that is two verbal forms that are put together for emphasis or certainty. The first one is what we call an infinitive absolute, and then the second one is a normal finite verb, a feminine third singular imperfect. And this is a very common thing in Hebrew, but we don't have quite the same concept in English of putting two verbs together like that. We bring these across as things like, thou shalt surely die, expressing certainty, but actually the Hebrew would be more like, dying thou shalt die. Here it's, if you were to say it very literally, it would be something like, blossoming she shall blossom, meaning that she will certainly blossom, or she will emphatically blossom. And really, the verb here that means producing flowers or blossoming here actually occurs three times in these short little two center lines. One on the top one there, that she shall blossom like the rose, and then the second one here, that blossoming she shall blossom. So we've got it in the center there very abundantly, three times the same word, emphasizing how big a deal this is going to be, that the desert will be blossoming. And we come to the next phrase here. The glory of the Lebanon shall be given to her, the majesty of the Carmel and the Sharon. They shall see the glory of the Lord, the majesty of our God. So, as we discussed last week, these are fertile places that are to the north of Israel, the Carmel, the Sharon. These are coastland areas. The glory and the majesty of these most fertile lands are going to be given to Zion. Zion was a hill country and somewhat arid, somewhat dry, and these were forest lands, impressive lands of great bounty. Zion will become like that. And there are two words here that are used in sort of an A-B pattern here, repeated in the next two lines. That's glory and majesty. And so the glory of Lebanon is then talked about, they shall see the glory of the Lord. And the majesty of the Carmel and the Sharon is referred to as the majesty of our God. And so it is relating these geographical ideas to the Lord God himself. And in verse 3 here, we have another nice little chiasm here. Strengthen the weak hands, and the buckling knees make firm. Say to the anxious of heart, be strong, fear not, behold your God. Vengeance comes, the recompense of God. He comes, and he will save you. Then shall be opened the eyes of the blind, and the ears of the deaf shall be opened. Then shall leap like a deer the lame, and sing for joy the tongue of the mute. So we have two chiasms really in that little area there, where we put the verbs on the outer part and the nouns on the middle here. Strengthen, hands, knees, make firm. And we have likewise the repeated verb opened here, open, eyes and ears open. And so this is a typical reversal A-B-B-A pattern that we call a chiasm. But we have here this idea of making the people have courage, and also to allowing them to see and hear. This is a reversal of what happened in Isaiah chapter 6, where it said that they would not see and they would not hear. We're now saying that they will hear, they will see. And we have here the idea of leaping like a deer. The word for lame here is the word that we mentioned just recently that comes from the same root as the word Passover, and it means to hop or to limp. And here it is contrasted with the mighty leaping of a deer. If you've ever seen a deer clear a tall fence, it is truly impressive. So the person who is limping along or hopping along on his lame leg here will suddenly have the ability like a deer to just leap huge amounts. And we also have the word for mute here. This is a fairly uncommon word. This is the first time we see this word in Isaiah, and it is going to be used again in Isaiah chapter 56. The word only shows up 4 times outside of Isaiah. So of the 6 times that this word is used in the Bible, 1/3 of them are in Isaiah. And this is the first time we see it here. We are fairly reasonably certain what it means here. The context is pretty clear, but we're going to have those that cannot speak being singing for joy. We've had phrases similar to this where we talked about the tongue of the stammerer and things like that. This is just another word that Isaiah uses. He often throws in new vocabulary words for us when he repeats ideas. Sometimes he repeats vocabulary words, sometimes he gives us new ones. This is a bit of a unique one here. So we have here the idea that all the physical limitations, blindness, deafness, lameness, mute, all of this is going to go away, and we will have praises, and we will have leaping, and we will have joy, and we'll have hearing, and we'll have learning. All of that are features of this new Zion. Then we have a nice little 3-layer chiasm here that I'll have to explain a little bit how we got this. It says, "For shall break forth in the wilderness waters, and wadis in the desert shall run. The burning sand shall become a pool, and the thirsty ground springs of water. In the haunt of jackals, a resting place, a courtyard of reeds and papyrus." Well, let's start off here. The word for break forth, it's a very dramatic term. It means to split open, to burst. It can't contain the water anymore. It's going to break forth. And so we have here the idea that the water is just going to burst. Now, the Isaiah scroll and the Dead Sea Scrolls restores a lost word at the end of this verse that completes a 3-level chiasm. And so I prefer that reading there. It seems like it should have been there, and that's that last line, shall run. And from the Isaiah scroll and the Dead Sea Scrolls, we now have this word back, which makes this into a nice little 3-layer chiasm here, that the verbs again on the outside, 2 different kinds of nouns on the inside here, that for shall break forth, the wilderness, waters, wadis, which are seasonal streams, desert. Desert is parallel to wilderness there. The wilderness is a type of desert, a midbar. This is another word for desert here. So wilderness and desert, and then shall run, paralleling break forth. This last word restored to us from the Dead Sea Scrolls. So I love the word also here for the burning sand. It's going to be turned into a reed pool, something that is very foreign for Zion. Zion, again, hill country, has the Gihon Spring for its water source. It is not a marshy or wet land, but here it's going to have a pool of reeds that are going to come up here in this area that had been the burning sands. That word is also uncommon, and it only shows up 8 times, and half of those are in Isaiah. So springs of water is also a rare word, and it shows up with only 3 appearances, 2 of them in Isaiah and 1 of them in Ecclesiastes, or Kohelet as it's called in Hebrew. And so that is also another interesting rare word here that Isaiah gives us. This is a complete reversal of the last chapter. There we had a courtyard for ostriches and other demons, and here we have a lair of jackals that is replaced with a courtyard for reeds and riparian entertainments. Yes, it is the same word that appeared in the last chapter with the same extra letter, making it actually read as grass, but almost certainly that is an error, and courtyard is what's intended by this word. Also, the mention of gome, papyrus, is almost certainly intended as to draw in images of Egypt with its abundant water and natural irrigation systems. Always the envy of Israel was Egypt, who just had this river that watered everything for them and that they could make canals off of. Water was never a real problem in Egypt, except that one time it turned to blood. But it was a thing that they always had in the Egyptian society that made them a very strong and powerful economy. Was they had an abundant water supply, and living in the hill country of a bit of a scrub desert in Jerusalem, this was an important idea. And we're saying that this is not only going to have pools, but it's going to be growing reeds and papyrus plants, all the things that cannot grow in Jerusalem. And those are going to be cropping up there. And we have in verse 8 here, and a highway shall be there, and the way of holiness she shall be called. Now, I abridged the English translation a little bit here. The Hebrew actually has, and there will be there a highway and a way, and the way of holiness it shall be called. There seems to be an accidental duplication of the word vaderek, meaning and the way, or and the way. The Qumran scroll, Dead Sea Scrolls, again, does not reflect that repetition. That is not in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and so we believe this was a scribal error that was added later, so I dropped it from my translation. And so we have really a better parallel here with the highway shall be there, the way of holiness she shall be called. So we have the idea that there is this road going in to Zion, and this way, or road, is the road of holiness, that to travel this road is a covenant road to reach Zion. And this is going to be established, and this is going to be a major theme in the second half of Isaiah. We're going to talk a lot about this road, this highway going back to Zion, and then it's going to be the thing that the faithful walk along. Then we have these next 3 lines here, which might be a bit damaged. It says, the unclean shall not pass over it. It shall belong to those who walk in the way, and fools shall not wander into it. So those last 2 lines are the ones that are really suspect. The unclean shall not pass over it. That is pretty clear what it means, and that there's not really a problem in the Hebrew there. But the next 2 lines are kind of a problematic thing here. Robert Alter talked about it, how he didn't see why the word fool should be there if it's supposed to be a contrast to the unclean, an antonym to it. It seems strange that you'd use the word fool. So other translations try and say that it is a fool will not wander into it. I've seen some translations are like a fool will not get lost while following it, trying to make some sense of why we're talking about fools here. All of those are kind of a stretch. And everything is a stretch with this right here, because we don't really have any good textual evidence of what it said originally. I like what Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia did, which I think is the best option, although it is also speculative. There's no textual evidence behind it, but they looked at it there and they rearranged the spacing between the words, which is something that often does happen, is where exactly are the spaces between the words does get lost with handwritten manuscripts quite frequently. And there are a couple of letters that they flipped the order of, and they came up with one line, feeling that some of it, again, was accidental duplication. And what they came up with would be translated something like, The unclean shall not pass over it, and the fool who walks in his own way. I think that's probably the better reading here. So rather than being an antonym of the unclean, it's just another synonym of the unclean, that the unclean will not pass through it, nor will the foolish person who walks after their own way, meaning they dance to the beat of their own drummer or they follow their own rules. This is going to be a road for the covenant keeping, the holy ones, the way of holiness, that's the way you keep in this road. The fools who have their own set of rules and that they follow that will not be in here. The unclean, those who will not purify themselves, also will not be on this road. I think that realistically that makes a lot better sense, and I think that's the better reading for these two lines here. And still talking about the road here, we have in verse 9, no lion shall be there, nor shall any ravenous beast come up on it. They shall not be found there. Now, these were real worries in the days of the time that this was written here. Lions were a real thing, and they were scary. And they're saying that there's not going to be a lion there. When you went out on the road, there was a possibility you could meet ferocious wild animals that would gladly have you for lunch. Saying that that's not going to be it. This is going to be a safe place to travel. We continue here. And the redeemed shall walk there, and the ransomed of the Lord shall return, and come to Zion with singing. Notice I changed where the verses divide there. The verse divisions are a much later thing. They don't always get them right. You feel free always to rearrange where you think a sentence or a verse ends. All that was decided centuries and centuries later. And at the time this was written, nobody had any idea what a verse was or what a sentence was. And so it's really a reflection of later grammatical ideas onto earlier times. But yeah, the redeemed shall walk there, the ransom of the Lord shall return, and come to Zion with singing. Eternal joy shall be upon their heads. They shall obtain gladness and joy, and sorrow and sighing shall flee away. So they're going to come to Zion singing. They'll have eternal joy on their heads. The invocation here of this glad song, this rina, it marks what we like to call an envelope structure, with the beginning in verses 1 and 2, where the desert is filled with singing because it's now blooming. Here we have the exiles now singing because they're on their way to Zion. And so we start the chapter and we end the chapter in this envelope structure. And they are singing on their way back to Zion as they walk along this highway through the desert. This, the road there that's highway is, the word that's highway is a little bit interesting. It might have meant originally like a mule trail, but mules were the main systems of commerce. Later it came to be more of a paved, built up, raised up area. And so highway actually does it quite justice, because this is like a very clear, easy path to go on, that it's going to be this highway going back to Zion. And we have all of the pilgrims here singing on their way to Zion. And this is a fitting end for what is widely considered the end of First Isaiah. It is powerful and beautiful, and these last two chapters form this stark contrast between the destruction and wasteland of Edom and the glory and joy and peace of Zion. And this in some ways encapsulates all of Isaiah's message, that the ethical standards he calls people to are what lead to the joy and happiness, and the corruption and the wickedness that he sees in his society, the slanders, the murders, the bribery, he sees that as leading to this horrifying wasteland with death and destruction throughout, or this land that will have the glory of the Lebanon, the glory of the Sharon, the glory of the Carmel, and will be a beautiful place to live. And so he presents this contrasting choice. Which will you choose? And I think that encapsulates Isaiah's message in a very nice way. What's going to happen next here is over the next 4 chapters, we're going to see something entirely different from anything we've seen so far in the book of Isaiah. It is basically going to be 2 Kings chapters 18 through 20 that are just dropped into Isaiah here with a few key changes. And it's going to tell a very important historical story that is kind of the climax of Isaiah's ministry. We'll dive into that soon in our coming episodes here. Then right after that, we'll hit Isaiah chapter 40, which is the beginning of this second section of Isaiah, which has its own interesting and unique properties and is a significant contrast from the first half of his book. And we'll have to see what we think of those. So stick around, like, subscribe, comment, share it with your friends, whatever it is that makes the special YouTube algorithms happy. And I will see you in the next one. Shalom.